Oh, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our participants around the globe. Welcome to the Climate Change and Science Diplomacy, an event supporting the COP26, which is sponsored by our partners, Euraxis and the EU POP, in collaboration with the European Union and European Commission. Negotiations, target settings, promises, and science diplomacy approaches are now currently happening at Glasgow. Science diplomacy plays a vital role in addressing the impacts and risks of climate change. In my country, there is a program that is being implemented, the Climate Smart Philippines. It is a platform that provides elucidations in reducing disaster risks and preventing potential damage and losses through scientific wide-ranging assessment, capacity development, project management, and multilateral cooperation among stakeholders. It is also an avenue for all the actors to understand, plan, develop, and implement not only the best science and evidence-based strategic solutions, but also the most humane and gender-responsive schemes in the most diplomatic way. Today, we are blessed to have the world-renowned science diplomats who have done fantastic projects in their countries. Let's start with our first panelist, Rheaprasad. Rhea, please introduce yourself, your affiliation, and your current work.
Hello, my name is Rheaprasad. I'm very, very pleased to be here. And Dr. Glenn Benagwas, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you, Rhea.
Dr. Glenn's birthday. We always remember it All Saints Day. So thank you for chairing this wonderful panel on your birthday. I always remember November 1st. My background is I've actually been partnering with Dr. Benagwas with the Environmental and Climate Change Research Institute for a few years now. And within that program that Dr. Benagwas heads up, we travel all over the Philippines, also even Southeast Asia, to help educate people, whether it's individual citizens all the way up to the municipal governments. And sometimes we even have the pleasure of speaking with mayors and senators and people like that to help inform them about climate models, adaptation strategies, policy making, and also funding mechanisms. And so I congratulate Dr. Benagwas on that, and I've been involved with that. My background is that I am a climate scientist, mathematician originally, but that paved the way for climate modeling. And I've been doing that for 30 years, believe it or not. And I worked on the original climate models that were being developed, the community climate models, and even the predecessors of the CMIPs, which were at Lawrence Livermore National Labs. This was back in, like 1990 on the very earliest supercomputers, the very earliest craze. I was right there on the ground floor with developing climate models. And I've been seeing it all grow up and continuing with my modeling efforts and also helping people to understand what these climate models are really saying and what it's not saying maybe as well. I've worked for NASA. I've worked for the United States Space Program for many, many years. I also have my own company called StatWeather, which is artificial intelligence applied to long-term weather and climate prediction and disaster prediction as well. And so I've done, different things in the world and have seen kind of the interplay between the academic community, government, the business community, the nonprofit community, that we need more of that. And that's really the key. And that's one of the aims also of Dr. Benagwas, the Climate Smart program, the Science Diplomats program, the Environmental Climate Change Research Institute, is to bring these parties together to dialogue, just like we're doing today. So I just want to say a couple words, which is science diplomacy is about understanding. And in the last panel, that was really emphasized that we need understanding. We need to bridge understanding, whether it's between politicians and scientists, or that the people out there can understand what their climate risks are and what these climate models are saying. So there are three things I feel that need to be understood as science diplomats, things that we can communicate. One, and some of this was spoken about in the last panel as well, and so I'm just maybe reiterating a few things as well. But one is the short-term versus the long-term effects of our actions. You know, as simple as when I throw that plastic bottle in, when I go to the beach and I throw a plastic bottle into the water, you know, the short-term effect is, well, I guess I don't have any trash in my pocket right now. But there's a long-term effect with that piece of plastic in the ocean. Also, the interconnectivity of our Earth systems. It's not just, you know, oh, you know, it's the problem of the oil companies. if we just can straighten up Shell and Exxon and all them will be okay. But it's a lot of stuff. What about the Amazon deforestation, which is the lungs of the earth? There are a lot of things in the world to help preserve our environment, that because all of these systems are interconnected. And so, you know, the oceans and our land and our tundras and all kinds of, you know, all parts of the world are interconnected. And then also the importance of preserving nature and our environment that sustains us. And I talk about my grandmother, who is now 99 years old. And my grandmother, she had no money when she arrived in Trinidad and Tobago from India, but she went through the trash, found some seeds like mango seeds and stuff, planted them, and she fed an entire family of 22 people on this one garden that she actually planted when she was 12 years old. And so the thing, and they still don't have money. They don't operate on currency over there, but yet they are very prosperous because they grow their own stuff, and they collect the rainwater to drink. And they, you know, from the trees, they built their house, but they don't have any money. 22 people live that way. And so the thing is, if your environment is intact, if you can grow, if you have good, clean water and these types of things, you can live. That's the basis of our life, not money. It's not money. It's our environment. It's our nature. That's what's actually at the bottom line is giving us our, you know, our sustainment for our life. So it's really important that we preserve our nature. And so those are the things that I would like to be understood. Thank you so much, Dr. Banagos, for the opportunity to share.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so our second panelist is from Thailand, Warajit Sedapan. Sai, so please, it is your turn. So you have 10 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much, Glenn and Eurexis, for the opportunity to be in the panel here today. So I am so honored and a little bit overwhelmed because everybody is such an expert. So I'll just say, Glenn said for me to introduce myself, right? So I'm Dr. Warajit Sedapan, and I am currently the Dean of the Asian Development College for Community Economy and Technology, Chiang Mai Ratchapat University. So I am in Chiang Mai Ratchapat University, which is the university focusing on the community development. I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand, in the north of Thailand. And most of my project, we usually go into community and then use science and technology to try to improve the lives of the community, more of the local community. And then as we do that based on our research and academic, we realize that in order to help increase using technology to the mass or help to make it more effective, we need to be able to talk to local policymakers, more. And then so we start to talk to the local policymakers. And then later on, because my focus is on smart community or green community, so we bring in renewable energy that local community can use. So which is solar rooftop, starting from solar rooftop to microgrid, and then to biogas, stove, biomass stove. And so anything that the resources in the community can use. So we focus on renewable energy that is based on the resources of the community context. And then once I start more with the energy, I start to work with the utility company and then also with energy regulator commissions. So I do projects where academics are sort of like the facilitator between the regulators, energy commissions, and also the utility energy provider, and also the power consumer, which is the local people. So I think about 5-6 years ago, I started on that, and I feel that maybe that's science diplomacy. And as academic, we use science-based, we use data and try to connect interdisciplinary people together. And so I've becoming, as a scientist, I'm a chemical engineering by background. And I, in my PhD, I do hydrogen. And then now I'm doing a lot of renewable energy. And then I kind of realized that not if you're just an engineer, but if you understand more of the policy, the local context, society, and more interdisciplinary, and that would help implement many of the project with which is renewable energy. So I'm just telling you this because at first I don't understand what science diplomacy is. And then now as I'm practicing it, and I think I'm kind of liking it and seeing the benefit that it can provide in more of the wider participant in a country or regional. So now it's more of a national level. And then I entered the program called the U.S.-ASEAN Science and Technology Fellows, where they train us scientists to go into the ministry and understand what the ministry is doing. So before that, I complain a lot about the ministry, and I don't really understand their concept or why they make the policy that way. So when I go in and I kind of understand more about the policy that is made, the what do you call it, the practitioner in the ministry, the planning and everything going on, and I kind of like bring back and see how academics can help bridge. How can we use science and data to help support the policymaker, because they're so overwhelmed with everything they have to do as a civil servant. And so I start to help support the Ministry of Energy. And then I start to help with ASEAN level. And then also I help with the APEC level, doing a lot of workshops or policy studies on disruptive technology for renewable energy, and also co-benefit between renewable energy and energy efficiency. So my expertise is more in the energy. And so I'll try to linkage into more of a climate change. So I focus on more of a mitigation, renewable energy. I'm also interested in adaptation too, and resiliency. And then now I'm moving on to more of a foresight. How do you do using data to do planning, and how do you include the green economy into various like provincial level and also more of a national level? And I hope I can contribute to the ASEAN level with the foresight. So that's kind of my background and how I kind of like work my way in, but I am still in the university and I am still dean a few more years. And then I think that how can we teach, or how can we motivate the younger generation for them to be able to understand and the uses of various technology or research method, and to help bridge with the community needs and the technology, and then the policymaker. And then not only that, we have to add on to the private sector, because the driven part is not just the policymaker, it's also the private sector. So I'm trying to bridge between, and so my student, they have to be able to communicate between various stakeholders. And then so that's what I learned a lot about the project that we've been going through, and how to communicate and how to relay scientific information or analyze and help facilitate or push forward science diplomacy. So I think it's a little bit of my background. So focus on more of a community level, but trying to use more of a local to global I heard about global to local, but also trying to local to global level and then bridging between global to come back to the community level. Okay, so that's about it.
Okay, thank you so much, Sai or Warajit. Okay, our next panelist is from the Kingdom of Cambodia, His Excellency Hul Seng Eng. Hang, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon again, all analysts and all participants across the globe. First, I would like to say, I think 10 minutes is too long for me to introduce myself, Glenn. And happy birthday to you. Actually, we used to meet almost every year before the pandemic. And now it's sad that we cannot see. I think even Ria, Warajit, I think our team, we meet quite often before the pandemic. Not quite often, but at least once per year. But now it's good also we can see face and all of us are safe. I hope we keep such kind of momentum of collaboration in the future. And thanks, Glenn, for organizing and EURASES for having this opportunity. And I'm honored to be part of this event. Thank Warajit. Actually, I love your word. I think we keep saying the word always bridging scientific knowledge to policymaker. And now I am a policymaker. We did this for many years before I came to be a Director General of Science, Technology and Innovation. And I was working as a researcher in a university in the capacity of researcher, dean, and then vice president of Institute of Technology of Cambodia for 14 years. And I believe I have to do something because Dr. Warajit always said how to bridge scientific knowledge to policymaker. And now I'm policymaker, and let me bridge what we have a concern in the past. And when I come into the position, of course, as Director General of Science and also Chair of Science, Technology, Innovation, National Custody Chair for ASEAN from Cambodia, we do a lot of things that we want to bridge knowledge made by scientists to have a sound and evidence-based policy. But just my quick comments, researchers, they are still researchers, and scientists, they are scientists. They have trained in that way in their specialized field for years. And as a policymaker, you need. We always, always said like researcher provide result tomorrow, policymaker need result yesterday, and the result what policymaker want is today, and it went very specific and straightforward, and something we have to deal with post not more science, not just the not more science of what scientists doing. For that reason, I keep approaching myself again and again to my former researcher at the former institute, all of that. But again and again, researcher, they have their past. They pave their way in the way that they do research on wastewater treatment. They just do on wastewater treatment. While I want to make a policy, a regulation on wastewater treatment, they said, "Oh, it's specific. My research is on removal of iron, removal of arsenic, like that." So it's really challenging for policymaker as well. When you go approach to scientists, they said, "Oh, here's my current project, and it's so specific for us. It's so specific for us, hardly to interpret whatever researcher is doing into a policy." And for that reason, I skipped my job from academia. I want to spend like several years more in policy development. Let's say, academia got complete.
Hang.
But when I come to policymaker, I want to make it happen. Let's see what I can do right now. And I see a lot of positive that we can do from government level. You know, a policy sometimes without any evidence we can do a policy because the situation is aging already. If you wait for researcher to do research, maybe another years. That's what I have experienced myself in the current context. And so I moved from academia and to a policy development. Let's say I stay here several years more. And because our retirement age is 60, now I'm 40 plus, early 40 plus, let's spend several years more, 10 years in policy development. And then let's see what's my job next. That's an exciting way that I can do right now. And I believe this dialogue on science diplomacy actually I want to inform all of you that the COSTI 80 meeting of ASEAN, Cambodia, I myself proposed science diplomacy in ASEAN, and I will lead this concept for ASEAN on science diplomacy, and I drafted a presentation on science diplomacy for ASEAN already, and we will go deeper by, I think, COSTI 81. We will go deeper concept note and more concrete action plan on science diplomacy for ASEAN, not for Cambodia, but for all. Like the former speaker have mentioned, have raised already the importance of science diplomacy. It goes beyond just collaboration. The science diplomacy itself, it goes even a strategic collaboration, not just collaboration like what we did in the past. For that reason, I think, whatever reason, climate knowledge itself for good science, I would like to say for good science, it remains there. Why not? There is room for us to work together. I quote a message from, I think, the Nobel laureate on GMO. He said, we need more science in politics and we need less politics in science. That's the most important word that I think we keep in mind. Science knowledge is always good. There, let's find way. And climate issue, disaster is all, not only Philippines, not only Cambodia or in Europe. I think it affects all. Why not we use this room for working together, for collaborating to solve this common issue? I think I would not talk more on this, and I am ready to work from policy development, specifically from Cambodia side on science, technology, and innovation. Thank you, Glenn. And
okay, thank you so much, Hang. All right, let's move on to our last panelist. Last but definitely not the least, Nam Wang Nguyen. Nam, please.
Thank you, Glenn. This is such a privilege to be here, and I feel a little bit of pressure sitting with virtually with the excellent science diplomats here. All of you are so excellent. I'm a lecturer at National Economics University in Hanoi, and at the same time I'm a policy advisor for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment in Vietnam. And in addition, I travel a lot, mostly around the Asia-Pacific region, to do some research project regarding climate change and green energy, energy economics, and especially circular economy. So you can tell that I'm a bit of quite something, like three things at the same time. I very much appreciate when Glenn arrived and introduced the term science diplomats. Yes, Maga also mentioned that science diplomats is such a new role, but it might be the game changer in this situation that we are facing, because science diplomats can help insert more science into policy making, and especially in the situation that we're facing, climate change and COVID-19, the unprecedented challenges, we need really decide what to do based on the scientific basis. And so the role of science diplomats really very important. And I'm glad that I've joined Glenn and the team. Let me give you a bit of quick glance about the ASEAN climate action at the moment, also my field of research, because all eyes are on the COP26. In ASEAN, we also have a number 7, as Ambassador Igor Drisman mentioned just now. In EU, you have a number 7, that is EU represents 7% of the world population. And in ASEAN, we also have a number 7, that is 7% of the global emissions. That's the contribution of greenhouse gas emission from ASEAN to the world. It's not big, it's not large, but we are happy to know that all ASEAN countries have submitted the updated NDC, the national determine to really reduce the carbon emission that we are emitting every year. And Brunei and the Philippines join us a bit later, but very much on time. And so all kinds of activities that we are doing at the moment, and in order to come up with the agreement with kind of NDC that we submitted, is the result of thousands of dialogues between scientists and policymakers, and also lots of scientific evidence sent to the government as well. So I hope that we will continue the work, and we'll bring together some more cooperation between countries in ASEAN, and also between ASEAN and EU to help mitigate climate change further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Hello, sorry, there's something wrong with my microphone. Okay, thank you very much. All right, okay, thank you. Yes, because everybody is still still don't know who science diplomats are. By the way, in the ASEAN region, we do have, all right. I founded that in 2016. We call it the ASEAN Science Diplomats, and now it's the Asian Science Diplomats. So if you asked us why this particular program was created, well, if you are an Asian or ASEAN Science Diplomat, the main goal of this particular program is to communicate science to the public, and at the same time, how you are going to integrate science into the policy, and that's the main objective. So most of the scientists that we have today in the panel, they are all ASEAN or Asian science diplomats, all right? Of course, not RIA, because RIA is from the US and from the European Union. All right, let's start with the very first question. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves and your current affiliation and your fantastic work. First question, guys. How science diplomats' minds make use of scientific knowledge to address climate change? Let's start with RIA.
Hello, thank you very much for this question. How science diplomats can make use of scientific knowledge to address climate change. And what I'd say that science diplomats can do in terms of scientific knowledge, and this is something that isn't spoken of very much, but I still think that a lot more needs to be done scientifically to improve our models, our metrics, our accuracy for future scenarios and future impacts for adequate adaptation strategies. And so we know the evolution of the IPCC reports has been that the language has been getting firmer and firmer with each iteration of the IPCC report, now on our 6th iteration. And this is because scientifically, we've been becoming more certain of the modeling of the causation effects and even the metrics, and more work can be done, because the more, the better we model, then also the stronger that language can be, that this is what it is, rather. And so, because we've seen the evolution of, well, it might be this, or it's likely that, it's highly likely this, it's highly likely, and now it is this. And so this is to tell you that it's still a work in progress. I still think that there are better ways that we can scientifically model the climate in such a way that it can also help society to be more certain of the outcomes.
Sai?
Okay. This is a very hard question sometimes, right? How does science diplomat minds make use of the knowledge to address climate change? Climate change, I feel that it's so vast. So I'm thinking of that for each diplomat. Sometimes it's kind of hard if you want to tackle like the big portion. So like for me, I just feel that if I can use the knowledge of renewable energy, and that start with renewable energy and use the knowledge to integrate with the local community to make like smart community, and then integrate more to be smart city. And how does that smart city is efficient or use less resources and to focus on the target of the national, because like each country have their own target, right? And then with the climate change. So I think using scientific knowledge more help with that, also the bridging and also the implementation. And when I see sometime like the policymaker, I sometimes feel the policy is good. Heng, I believe you will make good policy, man. Yeah, and then sometimes the policy is really good, but the execution, the stakeholder that do the execution, sometimes they interpret differently or didn't execute according to plan. So maybe scientific knowledge, we can use it to do appropriate implementation, use appropriate technology, use appropriate method, use scientific base, and using like that to drive the implementation toward the climate change. So it has to be a work that integrate interdisciplinary between various stakeholders and then help together to with the climate change. So like for me, I just sometimes I think of just renewable energy and how it's interlinked with energy is interlinked with everything, and how does that relate to climate change, and how can the science of knowledge of energy can help support the way of living and also the global, which is climate change. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, Sai. So maybe I'm going to get back to you because I have questions, right? Because you mentioned about renewable energy, you mentioned about your smart community. Maybe you can later you can provide some examples, specific examples, how your program really worked, all right, and positive impact the lives of Thai people. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to Heng. All right, His Excellency Heng. All right, so any specific examples about my question?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, again for the question. Again, the question is big, it's just in Cambodia context, we say like a four blind guy touch the elephant. But let me touch the elephant from my side as a policymaker on your question. Thanks, Warajit, Dr. Warajit again. On the policy perspective, the situation is hardly for us to wait, as a policymaker. Normally, it's always like that, and we have to deal with the situation every day. And as a normal science way of work, you need approach, you need methods, you need to do experimentation before you go for highly recommended, highly recommended, just like we mentioned in the the model. So it's a climate change model. So as a science diplomat, I am there. Thanks, Glenn. I am one of your alumni on that. You know, scientific knowledge is always best, but science diplomat, please keep this scientific knowledge to advocate as a tool for diplomacy, for advocating the importance of scientific knowledge. These are holy knowledge which you cannot change. Scientific knowledge of it's always there. So please keep in mind, this is really a gold, a diamond for you. You have in hand, an ace card in your hand as a scientist. Second is outreach correctly to policymaker, publics, and beyond. And last one, the third one is collaboration. I think the best way for a science diplomat is collaboration. Work closer with policymaker, work closer with entrepreneur. For two reasons. One, policymaker and entrepreneur, they are looking for something short term. And second, they go, you know, they don't wait for scientists. They all need to wait for a result from an entrepreneur, policymaker. They don't wait for you. They go every day. Everything is live, is changing. They change, they update. They don't wait for scientific result. For that reason, I do networking among scientists is important, and make a stronger voice, and be proactive is the best one. Proactive and engagement with policymaker, and please be relevant always what you are doing. Yes, these are my short on science diplomacy.
Okay, thank you so much, Hang. All right, Nam, any experience in Vietnam?
Yeah, I agree very much with Han that science diplomats should bridge science and policymaker. And so that's the first thing that we really need to keep in mind. And the second thing I would suggest is because all of us are working in different fields, and so we may have different contributions to address the climate change, to find a solution to really mitigate climate change or adapt to it. And so we let us be active, and also be on time. On time is important for policy making, as also Han emphasized. And just an example in Vietnam, before we submitted the upgraded or the update NDC in September 2020, we actually did a lot of research in the previous 2 years, and lots of evidence were given that encouraged the government to really confirm the new target. So that's really important that science should go together with decision making. That's just one case to share.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so you have been mentioning about the policies. So we will move on to that. So what particular policies are needed that will attain the ambitious targets of these NDCs, and the national determined contributions? All right, can they be about climate change mitigation, or is it possible to come up with climate change adaptation policy or strategy that will address this particular ambitious targets? So let's start with Nam, all right, the reverse. Nam, please.
Thank you. And yeah, that's an excellent question. I think, it's a global problem, but we have to act locally. But at the same time, we have to work together. So I think the most important policy is firstly to cooperate between sectors in an economy, and cooperate between countries, because we need to solve the problem together. The second point that I need to emphasize here regarding the policy is the policy for energy sector. In this case, I want to say about green energy, renewable energy, because at the moment, the greenhouse gas emissions is coming from energy sector the most. For example, in Vietnam, it's about 60 to 70%. So really, it's the biggest driver that we need to address. The third is let us consider some policy instruments like the carbon tax and the ETS. Because from our recent research, we found that carbon tax and ETS are the most effective way to really tackle the climate change and reduce the carbon emission. I have to say again that for these two instruments, it's very important that we have a scientific basis because in order to identify how much it should cost and how many credits we should really certify, it's really scientific based. And the last but not least, I think in ASEAN in particular, we need a more ambitious climate agenda, and we need to work together because there's still some room to be improved. And the targets that we have just submitted can be increased if we work together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I love the idea of carbon tax. Actually, I'm an advocate of carbon tax. Actually, there are two: the carbon tax policy, and the other one is the cap and trade policy. So I'll get back to you. Yes. Okay, Hang, please.
Thanks, Glenn. Again, I just would like to echo on trade and carbon tax. I 100% agree on that, and I think it's a main significant factor for shaping any socio-economic development of every nation. In addition to that, let me give deeper perspective on that, on what are the policies needed to attain NDC, all of this. I think beyond this, you may look into the generational developments of humankind, not just trading, all of that. One is education. To me, as a former academician, a former researcher at the university, I still think that education is one of the room to work longer. You know, if without education, people still deforest, still do this and that. You know, it's hardly. I think we need to shape the generation alpha. Maybe all of us are millennial or our next generation Z, maybe generation alpha. Please go for education, shaping an education in a way that you value climate, you value something commons. And second is, whatever reason, education, I think private sector is always there. Public-private sector partnership is always important. Like what I said from initially, private sector, they don't wait for you, and they need money every day. Make a sound policy allowing them to, play with that policy, allowing they get benefit also, and also they have social responsibility for environmental protection. And last one is, of course, from even Cambodia, I believe, and I used to work on this. We have national climate change adaptation policy. I think we have all of this, but the policy itself, it's always good. We need a more evidence-based policy, ensuring that no saliva drop when you develop policy and tear drop when you implement the policy. like Sai said from the beginning, we always have a joke, like when you develop a policy, your saliva drop down, but when you implement the policy, your tear drop down. So yeah, over to you, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Hang. All right, Sai, please.
Yeah. So the question is like, what kind of particular policy is needed for the ambitious target of NDC, right? So I think like, if you talk about the national level, all the policies has to be aligned. The national policies and the OKR, KPI for each ministry have to be aligned to look at the bigger goal, which is like for Thailand, we're starting to have a carbon neutrality target. Okay, and then when they set up the carbon neutrality target in 2065 to 2070, they all started to talk with different ministry and different stakeholders together. But when you communicate carbon neutrality, climate change to the general public, they feel that it's going to be, the effect would be to the economy, meaning like that it might generate more costs for the electricity, for all those kind of things. So when in the policy, if you want the general public or the private sector to have buy-in together. So I think we should target more of like the economy, and how do we develop economy in a more green way. So in Thailand, there is the policy called BCG. I just like want to say about that. Okay, so it's bio, circular, and green economy. So in the sense of, and then they're targeting sectors. So they're like pushing the BCG, BCG economy, focus on the different type of bio-based economy, circular economy, and green economy in agricultural food sector, health and medical sector, energy material, bio sector, and tourism economy sector. So if the target to different sectors, and then if we apply the concept of using green technology or bio-based, or focusing on waste reduction or waste circular economy, and that, I think that will also help. And then if the policy help that, I think it will work if the private sector get involved and the policymaker can provide the mechanism to facilitate and help with the market, and the private sector, and then it should run on its own. So anything new, the policy should be help with incentivize and everything. But the main goal when you communicate, it has to be the good for the country and good for the local, well, I always say community, I'm so used to this, but the overall like also economy and how do we develop sustainably green. Sometimes it's, what I feel is sometimes we don't have to develop as fast, but develop strong and then green and then sustainably. So it's like, if you want to communicate, just focus on the people understanding.
Okay, thank you very much, Sai. That, yeah, you are really a science diplomat, or specifically a climate diplomat, because that's how climate diplomat works. And for everybody's information, if you're a science diplomat, you can be a climate diplomat, environmental diplomat, or a disaster diplomat. All of them are science diplomats. All right. Okay, Ria, I would like to hear your words. Okay, Ria, please.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate these points and the last points that we just heard about getting the buy-in from the community by communicating, in the business terms, we call it the value proposition. What's the value to the community? And clearly what the advantages are for the community. I think in terms of attaining the ambitious targets of the nationally determined contributions, it's not just about setting goals, but planning a clean energy strategy on how to reduce emissions and transition us to a cleaner, greener world. So what we're seeing at COP26, as we're on the heels of this great event, is that for some NDCs, there's a target, we're going to do this by 2050 or 2060 or whatever it may be, but nobody knows how they plan to do it. And so what I feel is needed in these policies is more specifics, because we're hearing some generalities, but there are specifics, and it's through those specifics that that countries can gain the credibility that they're going to actually achieve these targets. And also in having these types of plans, it brings us closer to reality. And so I'm saying that I think that the clean energy strategy is what we need, because just saying, well, we're going to cut out emissions. Well, what are you going to do in place of that? You know, how are you going to employ renewables? How are you going to employ greener practices? And so, you know, all of these things have to be worked out. And I think that countries are working this out. But what we'll see at COP26 is that more acceleration needs to be done on this, so that it's not just this kind of pie in the sky goal for 2050, you know?
Okay, thank you. Because I'm reading some questions from the audience, but before I move on to that, I would like to ask you guys two more questions. All right. So the second and last one is, okay, you mentioned about the role of the private sector, the role of the policymakers, all right, in terms of policy, because you know what, in the Philippines, we do also have that. We have the Climate Change Act, we have the 7 priority areas, all right, to address climate change in terms of food security, sustainable energy, water sufficiency, climate smart and disaster resilient infrastructure. We do also have one for human security. Number 6, the ecological environmental stability, and the last one in terms of knowledge management, capacity building. So we have that specific policy, and we have those 7 priority areas. So I would like to hear some more of those from your experience. So next, since that we have been talking about the role of the different sectors, like the private sector, Sai mentioned it, the role of the private sector. We will move on to that. What do you think is the role of the different stakeholders to achieve these targets? All right, so I'm talking about the targets in your NDCs. Ria?
In terms of the different stakeholders, first of all, it's recognized that we have a lot of players involved. Of course, there's the community, there's the private sector, there's academia, who has an important role to play with research and with diplomacy and communication. There's the government, who has a very important role to play also in terms of incentivizing. The government is not just a vehicle for policy, but the government can really incentivize the research and the implementation of plans through their funding mechanisms as well. And we need, in all of the ASEAN countries and even in the EU, what we really need is incentivizing entrepreneurship and more innovation and things like that, and for government to do that, because we're seeing solutions in the clean energy space, big solutions coming up from the entrepreneurs. And so that has to be incentivized through government and supported also by this ecosystem. And then we also have the nonprofit and the NGO sectors, whether on the research side, the advocacy side, education side, implementation side, resilient side. So all of these players do have to cooperate for the Paris Agreement goals to be met.
Thank you very much, Ria. Sai, based on your experience.
Based on my experience, there are various roles for the stakeholder. So as me, academia, sometimes we're just focused on research. Like Heng said, you just do research for a few years, but can't do really working, and the policymaker wants it yesterday or like a year ago. So I think the role is that we have to know that what we're capable of. We're capable of doing more of communication, scientific-based communication. And then the research, our research problem or the research goal and target may have to sometime morph until more applicable for the local environment instead of more published base. So basically, I think because there are, we have to adapt to the role that we can work together. So academia, they have to adapt. The policy maker, they have to reform their policy. Whatever 30, 40 years regulations, they have to change it to make it more updated like that. So, and they have to be, do the regulation and support and facilitate, not control or take over everything. So, and then they have to let the private sector grow, but grow in a more sustainable way and not burdening the more of the general public if they're incentive. And then also for one more role that I think is important is the media nowadays. So I think understanding of the people through media, social media, or news and everything, if there can be a better understanding through media and regarding to climate change and regarding to impact, regarding to if we implement this, it would be greater good. And I think this media can help be a role in bringing the stakeholders together as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Heng, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, actually, I don't want to repeat from what Lee and Dr. Warajit mentioned. I think we share similarity on how stakeholders play a role in addressing climate issue, all of this. But what I want to say is we need a more systemized approach in terms of dealing with academia, industry, government, and development partner. All of this, I think specifically Cambodia or ASEAN region, we have enjoyed with many development partners and how we play. How can we make this ecosystem, ensuring that everybody play their role, and then finally we reach our climate goal. And the thing is, I think my simple word will be broken, but a more systematic approach. All of this is we have done all the things, but we did a more system way of work, ensuring that academic play their job, industry play their job, government play their job, and development partner play their job, and finally we get what we want.
Okay, thank you very much. Nam?
And which is good for all.
Sorry, Heng, because of the internet connectivity. Okay, thank you very much, Heng. Nam?
Yes, thank you, Glenn. Someone says that I should stay closer to the microphone, so please don't mind my big face.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I very much agree with what Syed mentioned, and also I want to recall another point that she also mentioned before. That is the gap between the academia and policymaker. I'm lucky enough to work as a scientist, but also like a policy advisor, and I'm getting closer to a policymaker to be a policymaker like Heng. I kind of understand the gap, and it's kind of very interesting that there are something that sometimes scientists might never think about the thing, but it's actually crucial for policymakers, and so the role here regarding the question, I think all stakeholders should change the mindsets. Let us be open-minded and think for the others, and that's the point that I want to emphasize here. The second thing is pretty much related to my recent research about the role of private sector in carbon emission mitigation, and we found that private sector all around the world are playing an increasingly important role in not only providing resources for mitigating climate change, but also really driving the works. It's really that the state, the government just can play the role of providing what we call playground for the private sector, and so the private sector will have the condition to really contribute to the effort. And so that's another thing that I want to emphasize: the role of private sector. And talking about that is not only the companies, the enterprises, but also all of us every individuals can play a very important role in helping the earth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nam. All right. So one last question before I read the questions of our audience. Okay, this is I don't think it's hard or easy for you guys. So what ASEAN countries can learn from the EU or from the US or vice versa to attain climate resilience? Ria.
Thank you very much for that question. One thing that I think that the EU or that the US can learn more in terms of supporting climate resilience is they need to learn more about how their actions contribute towards what's happening in the climate space in developing countries and in the ASEAN region. So for example, when I am in the ASEAN area, and when you live through 22 super typhoons for the years that I was over there, you see up close and personal the ravages of climate change in areas that didn't used to get certain types of conditions and all kinds of other things. And so people don't know that. A lot of people don't recognize the huge effects that other parts of the world experience. So somebody in the US in the Midwest might say, well, I don't think it's real. I don't think it's happening. But then, what about in other parts of the country or other countries? So I think that that's where there can be more education and learning is what is really happening in some other countries and how, what is the real life scenarios. And so that's where there can be more communication. And then I think that where ASEAN can learn from places like the EU would be on certain types of technologies and what can be learned about things like, say, wastewater management or, for example, how they're handling plastics and things like that. So I think that there could be definitely some good technology learnings. And like I said, on the EU side, they can learn more about what the people are going through in ASEAN.
Okay, thank you very much. Nam or Sai, please. Sai.
That's a hard question too. It's a different context. When we talk about ASEAN, right? Like Heng, you're in COSTI meetings. Sometimes like you want to push the agenda as ASEAN or like support agenda as ASEAN. I seem like it might be we have to look at different contexts for each country, different perspective for each country, and it might take a little longer than what I feel is that it's like we can learn some of that from the EU and how they manage with various countries together and work forward. So that's what I feel. I'm not sure. I'm just like asking you because you're the policymaker now, and I'm just like on the outside. But I kind of feel sometimes it's harder for us, the 10 ASEAN members, to work together and move forward. Maybe tackle climate change as the ASEAN community. But there are ways, and then there are different mechanisms we can learn, and maybe also, like Ria said, technology definitely. And then also we can also start with sharing of information, sharing of data, and how sharing of best practices. And I think that can also help because there's a lot of good best practices also in the EU, and we can learn from that. And then as a different context, but it's hard to like transfer learning from EU and ASEAN, just different culture and different ways of thinking. And for us, I think we have a more, there are ways of chill. I don't know. I feel that we're focused on the people, the happiness, and then sustainably moving forward. So I think, yeah, we can learn from both sides. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Nam, please.
Yeah, thank you. I very much agree with the point that Sai just mentioned about the cooperation. In fact, I think it's the most important thing that we can, as ASEAN as a whole, can learn from EU because you know that the EU have a lot of agreements between countries, and even in the field of climate change, we have particularly a circular economy action plan, for example. That's for the whole region, European region. And that's very nice, a very nice example for ASEAN, since we haven't found a good way to cooperate, cooperation, and we really need to learn from EU, having some kind of action plan together, like say ASEAN action plan on tackling climate change or circular economy, for example, and regarding to the action plan, of course, there should be some experience exchange between ASEAN countries and EU, and we learn not only the best practices, but also maybe the bad practices. I mean, we learn from mistakes. Of course, EU countries would be glad to share with us the experience, and also technology, because about technology, we are still behind of EU, and we'd love to learn from EU. Those are the 3 points I want to mention. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Nam. All right, Heng. All right, okay.
Yeah,
Heng.
thanks. Thank Glenn for the hard question, and thank Dr. Warajit for throwing the stone on me. Not, the question is hard
you're in it.
to answer. It's not a policymaker can answer this question. Yeah, I think learning from each other is nothing right. There is nothing wrong here. So learning from each other is always best. And I catch a point that Dr. Warajit mentioned on culture is different, context different, socio-economic, political, economic is different. And now let me a little bit on the geopolitical tension, a little bit different. So all of this must be in the consideration. You know, I think we come back to the first one we discussed on, you know, policy. I do acknowledge that most of developing or emerging economic nation always just pick and put, you know, take one policy from one developed nation and then use this as a model. And it ends up like, why this one is not working in your context? You know, culture, history, when you study history, you will see, you know, something very deep, not just a layer, superficial of what, how to be done in terms of policy. So let's go back again, a context, the most, you know, word that cover everything. You go for culture, you go for policy, you go for education, you go for history, you go for collaboration, historical, all of this must be considered. And of course, when we learn, we not just learn from best practice. Bad practice also is also good to learn from each other. And it's good time if we have a speaker from Europe, that we can keep a kind of dialogue so that we can customize what is practice in Europe and what is the practice in our ASEAN region, for instance. Over to you, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I would like to read some of the comments of our audience. Good point, Ria. ASEAN is bearing the brunt of extreme and more frequent and stronger storms and typhoons due to climate change. Coral reefs are dying, reduced food security. And another one is we are waiting for the evaluate. I'm sorry, this is more the evaluation form. Then another one is ASEAN has to strategize on how to reduce CO2 emission globally. We have to develop ways and means for the world's top global CO2 emitters to reduce their emissions, even resorting to more radical approaches and other more creative approaches. Wow, well, thank you so much. Okay, just to wrap this up, because we don't have much time anymore, Thank you so much for our audience. Any last words from our panelists before we end this session? Let's start with Ria.
Thank you very much. I just would like to say that every person has a role to play and that every little bit helps. It's not black or white, that, oh, if we don't meet this target, it's over with, let's just stop trying. But it's a gradient. What we see from the IPCC report is that every bit that we do, it has an impact. You do more, you get more impact. And so everybody has a part to play in stewarding the earth, whether it's each person, each community, each corporation and organization, and each country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ria. Sai, please.
I also want to echo Ria, is everybody have a part to play. I think you should start with yourself as well. And then if you do a little changes, become a little bit more environmental friendly and spread the word. And then also then start with your home and then your workplace and spread on. And I think everyone can do a part of science diplomacy and to help with the target of the climate change. Yeah, so yeah, basically.
Thank you, Sai. Okay, Heng.
Thanks, Glenn. I think at least my heart as environmental engineering. I choose environmental engineering. I love environmental engineering in my, primary school. So I think by training and by heart also, I love environments. And I think what we need to do next is to work closer together and start something small. I think Glenn, you are one of the broker also in this ecosystem. How can we work between the region and Europe, and how can we, collaborate for common good? I think start something small first, and then do it step by step. I think from my side, from Cambodia, from STI point of view, I'm ready to support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heng. Nam, last words, please.
Thank you. So every one of us can be a science diplomat in our field. So let us work together for the earth. That's what.
Okay, thank you. So the primary challenges may slow down the success of utilizing science diplomacy in the implementation of climate change mitigation adaptation strategies if they are not going to be addressed. And there's a big probability that the whole institution, organization, or system might collapse, giving rise to discord and acrimony. So it is imperative to revisit the entire system, to understand the root cause of the quandary and reapply the plethora of elucidations once again. It is a must to have a competitive, innovative, and dynamic institution or organization that fosters robust productivity growth that includes the creation and sensible application of scientific knowledge, supportive policies toward development, science-based schemes, and embracing the evolving expertise and know-how, promotion of good governance, transparency, and responsible regulations, effective dispute decision, and a view toward enhancing participation in both internal and external states of affairs. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, I almost forgot. The picture takings, or I am requesting everyone to turn on your video. We want to see your handsome and beautiful faces. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Glenn, and thank you so much to our panelists. That was really fantastic. And I have to tell you, I mean, the fact that so many people stayed for what was a really long session is a fabulous sign. That was incredibly enlightening. It was very informative, and I think we all walk away today a lot smarter than we were when we joined the session. Yes, as Glenn has said, if you'd like to all kind of open your cameras so we can have a quick group call, group picture. And to all our participants today, we will, when we close the session, there's a little survey, and we'd like you to just fill in the survey. That would be fabulous, to give us some ideas on how we can improve, of course, and what other trainings we can offer you. I would like to, Jenny, are the pictures taken? Because I'd like to just briefly share my screen, because we have on the 3rd of November, a really, really exciting workshop. It's called Talking Climate. And it is done by Dr. Diana Born. She's based in Berlin in Germany, and she is doing a 2-hour exclusive training. It's a train the trainer workshop where you will learn how to communicate with everyone on the important issue of climate change and how you can yourself instruct others on how they should engage in, what can be a little bit of a contentious issue. So we are hosting this session on the 3rd of November, and we have 10 seats available for some of you. Now you have to do something for us. I'm sorry. You will have to go on our Facebook page, and I'm just posting this now in the chat box to everyone. The EUR-ACCESS ASEAN Facebook page. You find a post there, and in the comment section, just send us a little line, why you think this is important and why you think you should be offered one of these spots. So we think this is a great opportunity for you to join us on the 3rd of November. Now with this, again, thank you so much. This was a fabulous session. Thank you all. I know you're all incredibly accomplished, which means you must all be incredibly busy. So thank you so much for taking time out, and Glenn can finally go and cut his birthday cake. The EU R&I Days 2021 have only just started today. We have program until the 16th of December, and I said at the beginning 25 sessions. So please visit the event website and sign up for everything that is of importance and interest to you. We have workshops, we have trainings, we have info sessions, we have matchmaking sessions. So please join us in the next few weeks, and we hope that you enjoy this as much as we do. So Jenny, any last words from you?
Yeah, just please follow our social media accounts, EUR-ACCESS ASEAN on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And again, thank you so much for our excellent panel, Science Diplomat Glenn Banaguas and the rest of the Asian Science Diplomats. Of course, Dr. Marga Soler, His Excellency Igor Driesmans. Who else was there? Dr. Eric Piaget, and also Professor Dr. Luc van Langenhove, and all the others. Thank you so much. And of course, all of you participants, this is just a start. We will be together for the next weeks, we hope. All of our trainings are for free, and we endeavor to make sure that you get the most out of it. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much. And also a thank you to the Renaissance team, as always, behind the scenes, making sure there are no IT glitches. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, good night, everyone, and have a good day in Europe. Bye.
Bye.